Let me give a quick introduction to Wagner. He almost needs no introduction. He's very, very well known in this field. And he's one of the key founders of the IAC, the International Academy of Consciousness. And he's been the past president from 2001 to 2014. He heads up their R&D, and much of what you hear for us here about his R&D and his functional magnetic resonance imaging thing studies with regard to bioenergy. But before then, he had an electronics engineering degree in Brazil from '83 and worked in that field for a number of years. But then because of who he is and his abilities to project and his understanding of the fields, he decided to devote his career to conscienciology and projectology, and we're glad he did. And we're glad that he's here to talk about some of his many discoveries that he has made. In addition to founding the IAC, which people around the world know about, and he's talked at many, many conferences, etc. He's author of a great book, I'm sure it's back there, Retrocognition, which is an investigation of memories of past lives and the periods between lives. So with that, let me just turn it all over to Wagner, and we appreciate this interview.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank all of you for the opportunity, and it's a pleasure, it's an honor to be here. So I'd like to thank also Mary and FMBRTV. And as you know, as it was said here, I would like to discuss some of the results, or at least preliminary results, of this research I have been conducting on bioenergy. Probably as you know, bioenergy is also called prana chi organ. This is just to try to connect many different things you know. But before I go to that, let me try to convey here, to tell you what I would like to achieve with this presentation. It's more than just sharing results with you. So I'd like to share some of these preliminary results, because I cannot say that these are like the final conclusion, if there is such thing as, you know, a final result or anything. But also, I would like to see if I can motivate other people, other researchers, to see if they can replicate these results. Because as you know, if we want to bring this to a more scientific level, I cannot just say I found this, I achieved that. We have to see if other people would be able to do the same thing. And also, in a very sincere way, I'd like to see if I could get some constructive criticism. Because as you know, nobody knows everything. Nobody can do everything. And perhaps I could be seen here sometimes as a kind of naive guy, but I think good science can only be done with cooperation. Yes, so when people try to grab all the resources and control everything, this is not good science. And mainly in an area like this, because when we start discussing here about other dimensions and expressions, manifestations of the consciousness out of the body, you know that we are in a very difficult terrain. It's in a fringe area. As some people say, the bigger, more pretentious the claims, what about the evidence? They have to be even stronger. So that's exactly what I would like to see if we can achieve here. And I would like also to discuss a little bit of the possibility of, in the future, of us developing a new type of technology. We have technology of electricity, technology of thermodynamics, technology that deals with, controls, transforms many different types of energy. But can we develop a kind of technology of prana, chi, organ, this life force? And I think we can. And perhaps, just perhaps, this could be a good way to start that. Okay? So, as I was discussing, look, there are so many different names for this, and I have a list of perhaps more than 100 different synonyms for this so-called vital force. Some expressions are very popular, very universal, like prana, chi, and others are very unknown because they are used only by a very specific group of people in a small island there in the South Pacific. But the thing is, the whole point is, this is a kind of universal thing. So, throughout human history, many different points in the space and time, at least in this planet, people have mentioned something like this. So Egyptians, the classic Greeks, they were mentioning some sort of life force. But the thing is, so far, we haven't been able, when I say we, humans, our science, we haven't been able to detect, measure, and to prove beyond any reasonable doubt that this is real. People have mentioned they can feel energy, they can heal with energy, they can sense the energy from a plant, from the dog, they can leave the body sometimes, having the so-called vibrational state. There is a kind of regimen of the energy when this gets more intensified. But you know what most of the scientists would say? Anecdotal. Can we reproduce these things in a lab? So that's exactly what I have in mind here. But then, certainly perhaps to understand a little bit the assumptions or the model here, as you certainly know, when we mention consciousness, most of the people will understand this concept as being what? A particular attribute of the brain, isn't it? A kind of level of complexity of our thoughts, neurons functioning, that gives rise to this kind of self-awareness. But you will see a little bit later here, because I started having the so-called out-of-body experience, astral travel, when I was quite young, when I was about 10 years old, and I kept having those experiences regularly up to this day. I could see myself many times out of my body, as lucid as we are here right now. For me, internally, and I cannot prove this, at least not now, not up to this moment, I was, as a consciousness, as a being, as integral, as whole as I am here right now. But I was outside of my body, so I could see my body there, resting, sleeping. My brother there on the other bed. So I grew up, for me, knowing, look, this thing people call the soul, the spirit, essence, Atman, whatever the name you want to give to it, it is something that is independent from the brain. But then certainly maturing, studying, and then I started there when I was in university thinking, well, look, how can we bring a kind of a more formal proof to this? Because so far what we have been doing, trying to teach people how to use the body. If every being, at least human being in this planet, starts leaving the body, we don't need to prove that thing anymore. Do you agree with me? Yeah? That has been our approach. And many times I use this example. Look, we know that we can dream. There is this kind of phenomenon called dream. But why have we never bothered trying to prove dreams exist? Basically because, if not everyone, most of the people can dream. So when I mention dream, you're going to remember your own experiences, and then that's it. So far, now for more than 30 years, I have been working with other people trying to teach people how to leave the body using different techniques, different approaches, but always keeping an eye on this. And really, look, we have to have a deeper understanding of this, and we know that some people really need to have an external proof to be able to dive in head first to see if they can change a little bit their point of view or their paradigm. So the way we see this universe, this whole reality we are in, is made basically of two different things. Matter energy, that is basically the same, because as you know, we can convert one into the other. So I take this as a single property, entity of the universe, and consciousness is something else. But many times people ask me, well, then, how do you explain how is consciousness? What is consciousness? Really, I don't know. But, yes, because look, is the main, I think, is the main question of our knowledge or of our science. But I can say one thing, at least to this model, consciousness is not a form of energy. It's a level of organization, it's a processor of information and energy. But it seems consciousness is what organizes things. Consciousness organizes energy, information, organizes matter to this level that, at least in this planet, it can express this thing that we call life, a physical intelligence, a physical brain. But we don't know if this is everything. We don't know if this is the top. But then, if consciousness is something beyond matter and energy, probably beyond space and time and all these other concepts we have here, okay? How can this, something non-physical, control the physical body and control the physical universe, interact with it? How can the consciousness, through the body, sense the environment? So if we can touch things, we can smell, and this information goes there to that other level. There has to be a bridge. Something non-physical, something very physical. What is there in between? And you know, this is one of the problems of consciousness, the hard problem of consciousness. So, this bioenergy is a kind of a model to explain the link between consciousness and this physical world, this matter energy here. But because of my projections, and again, I cannot prove this, perhaps I can only motivate you to try to do the same, we can see that this matter energy can be organized, expressed in many different levels or dimensions or spheres. Because in many of my experiences, when I left my body, I could see other realms, other things, other beings. So, where is the consciousness there? We still don't know, but it seems to be a property beyond or in parallel to this thing we call matter energy. But then, let me give a very quick background to this line of research, because I think this can contextualize the things we are going to discuss. As I said, I started having out-of-body experiences, some experiences and sensations of this so-called bioenergy when I was still very young, around 10 years of age. So, around 1983, I started working on a way to detect and measure bioenergy. At that time, I tried many different devices, transducers, machines, so magnetometer or Geiger counter, many different semiconductors in many different ways, but nothing worked. Okay? But then, graduating, I had a different idea. I thought, look, perhaps I'm taking this the wrong way. If life is already the expression of this energy, well, the inspiration is where? In semiconductor crystals? No, organic matter. And then I thought, well, I don't want to put wires inside of a cat or on a plant because of the ethical issues of this, of course, but also because of the reliability of these things. Because if I use a human or perhaps a living thing, the internal dynamics would alter all these measurements. And then I thought, well, perhaps I can use some organic substance in vitro. And then I picked proteins. Why? They are so central in the process of life. They are very complex molecules. Many times their shape, the way they fold, is more important than the formula, how many hydrogens, carbons there. And then, well, I thought, let me get a very simple form of proteins. I suppose you know collagen. What is collagen or collagen? Is jello, gelatin, is that thing that we eat. So I got a food-grade gelatin or collagen. I prepared a gel, put 2 electrodes there inside, and then I tried to measure some of its electrical properties, mostly, simple electrical resistance, to see how that would change under some bioenergy field, like someone trying to heal, someone trying to produce a flow of that prana or chi. What was the idea? Well, our body already expresses some of these commands of the consciousness. Something happens in the neuron that we don't know. So I can do something like this. So this is just an android, a robot, yes, an automaton. But then me, as a consciousness, some way, alter some of the properties here of one or more neurons, and suddenly you produce that cascade of impulses until we produce this. There has to be something there. So that's why I thought of proteins. Again, I thought, well, if I have this gelatin of collagen there, if I send some energy, probably I'm not going to alter the atomic number of these atoms there. Okay? But perhaps we alter a little bit the shape of this, because it is in water. Yes, it's a colloidal thing, like in most of our processes. Perhaps this would change the electrical resistance there. And the thing is that it worked. I had, not in every experiment, but I had a very significant variation of electrical resistance. And I think this is one of the things you might want to try to see, to replicate, because it's something very simple. It doesn't require no millions of dollars. And it's something that perhaps can be reproduced. If you want to discuss more about this later, I can even tell you what were the problems I had to face. One of the problems was when you put a DC current to measure resistance there in a watery medium, what do you call it? Electrolysis. And this was altering there. Well, anyway, just for you to have an idea of the things we have to overcome to study this. But anyway, I kept studying this, and I had that idea of having a kind of bioenergy technology. And I have to confess something here that for some of you is going to sound perhaps a little bit too sci-fi. In many of my projections, when I left my body, went to other places, I saw some machines, some kind of technology different than ours. And you can imagine for an electronic engineer, seeing new tech, new technology, what everyone wants. So when you come back, what do you try to do? Reproduce that. But the thing is that the gap from that to what we know is too big. No, it's like if a kid asks you, Dad, can you make an iPhone at home? No, you can't. You can't even understand how it works, but you need a lot of steps, resources to be able to do that. But anyway, the inspiration was there. I wanted to see, for instance, if we could use a machine to measure the energy field of someone. How powerful a person can be sending, transmitting energies. Can we do, for instance, a kind of satellite that would be, in orbit and measuring the bioenergy of the planet Earth? Would it be easier for us to plant, to have some crops in certain areas than in others, based on this kind of bioenergy field? Well, you can have many ideas like that, but that was my inspiration then. And then, continuing here, in 1991, I had the opportunity of meeting one doctor who was running a sleep lab in the city of Porto Alegre in Brazil. So he invited me to go there to try to reproduce our experiences and those other states to see what would happen under the EEG, electroencephalogram. Not exactly measuring bioenergy per se, but what happens in the brain. Well, making a long story very short, he told me, look, Wagner, if I didn't know you, I would have to say that you have no seizures, that you have some brain problems, because your brain waves are different than the norm. And then I asked him, what do you see there? And then he showed me there, for instance, like some synchronizations of many different brain circuits. A kind of very fast thing, or he thought it was noise. But then many years later, I did the very same experiment. So much more recently, better equipment, now with computers, no digital acquisition there. And then what we could notice, again, many different circuits would synchronize. So those waves would move at the same time, and with a very strong activation or predominance of what nowadays people call gamma waves. Have you ever heard of this? Because we know beta, alpha, theta, delta. So nowadays, with better equipment, more able to filter out interference, mainly the 60, 50 hertz from our power. And then they could see there are a lot of this activation of the so-called gamma waves. And many people think that gamma waves could be one of the manifestations of the awareness or the consciousness in the brain, like a way of synchronizing many different circuits, giving rise to this phenomenon we call awareness. But then I presented some works there because I thought, look, I was always keeping an eye on the technology, and certainly I started reading about MRI. Yes, magnetic resonance imagery. Sometimes people say nuclear magnetic resonance, but nuclear for most of the people means what? Nukes, bombs, so they drop this. But anyway, yes, it's the resonance of the nuclei, yes, based on the spin and many other things there. So what we know is when we put matter under a very strong magnetic field, all these nuclei, they align like many different compasses would align under our Earth magnetic field. But as you know, we can play with this to get images of the body, and this is used also to assay some materials. This is used in physics and chemistry for many different things. So I thought, well, what happens if I get inside one of those machines and if I try to leave my body? Or if I induce that state that many people call the vibrational state. I don't know if you read the books, for instance, of Bob Monroe. He mentions there the vibrational state. Or even before that, Robert Krukal, Sylvan Muldoon, Hubert Carrington, and many others. They were mentioning this very typical thing. People, before leaving the body, not always, but many times, they feel this kind of resonance, a very intense vibration, as I felt many times in my life. Okay? So, well, anyway, I discussed this with other people, just saving time here. But then, what is the whole point here? If we can prove the existence of this so-called bioenergy, prana, chi, argon, I think we could be at least halfway to proving that consciousness is or can be a separate entity from matter energy from the body. Could be a way of connecting many other things. For instance, when I discuss about out-of-body experiences, most of the people ask me, where is the proof? Where is the money? Yes. So how can we prove somebody left the body in a way that is going to satisfy everyone? So far we have used what? Well, a person goes to another room, sees something, return and tell others. As the person could not know that thing, well, that could be the proof. Well, many people did experience like this. During the 60s, the 70s, one organization in New York, I don't know if you have heard of the American Society for Psychoresearch, Carlos Oasis, Donna McCormick, and many others, they did experience like this with very good results. But then I have to ask you, why those experiments didn't prove the out-of-body experience? And in my organization, IAC, we have done the same. People left their bodies, went there, picked the image, randomly selected by a computer there. They got back, well, but this didn't convince people. So then I thought of doing something perhaps more technological, more like hard science. So, anyway, as you know, other people tried to show and prove the existence of bioenergy. Many names. I don't know if you have heard of Mesmer, 18th century, yes? Reich, yes? I went last year to his museum, there I think it was Maine, yes, very interesting things there. Korotkov with this gas discharge process. I don't know if you have heard of Burr, Harold Sexton Burr. Blueprint of Immortality is a very interesting book in case you want to read something interesting. Well, these are just a few names among many. But again, why don't we have a kind of a proof accepted by most of the existence of this kind of energy? So I think the why is very interesting here. So what would be the minimum quality level of a proof that would satisfy most of the scientists? That's exactly what I am after. Okay? So one of the problems is, many times when we study these guys and many others, we see that many of those experiments, they were operator dependent. Do you understand what I mean here? Mm-hmm. Many things worked under Reich attention, but not with others. So it's very difficult to replicate, to repeat this kind of experiment. So then, what should we do now with all these facts? And then you will see it. Can we prove if bioenergy, brain energy organ is real? If it is real, is it detectable by technology, not only by people, plants, animals? Is it measurable? Can we measure it? Can we give it, for instance, an unit, like volt, like ampere, like kilo? Can we give that 0? So we can measure in a very objective way. Well, and then after we have this, can we develop some kind of theoretical framework for it? Because many times people ask me, Dan Wagner, what is bioenergy? And my most sincere answer is what? I have no idea. But look, many times people think this is really a problem. Many times people say, look, Wagner, for you to start this research, we have to have first this theoretical framework. It's not exactly. Have you ever studied a little bit about the history, the research of electricity and magnetism? What were the first manifestations of electricity? Lightning? Static electricity? I don't know if you know, but the name electron comes from electra. That was what? A material. It was amber. That people used to friction against perhaps a piece of cloth, produce static electricity. And they knew magnetite, it's a mineral that is magnetically, it's magnetic naturally. So we knew these things. We had our electricity functioning inside of us, all around of us, but people couldn't perceive it, could not understand it. Do you remember some of the first names of these pioneers of the research of electricity?
Tesla.
Even before Tesla. We had, for instance, Volta. Yes, discs of different metals in NASA would produce a kind of flow that would provoke the contraction, for instance, Galvani was doing this, of the legs of frogs. And then we had what? Faraday, Ampere, and then people would have these coils pass a magnet, and then the compass would reflect. Did they have any kind of theoretical framework of electricity and magnetism? Not at all. Was what? Experimental in the most simplest way possible. I have to confess, I am at that phase. Okay? So I'm touching frogs' legs, I know the equivalent of that, because really we don't know where we would go. But after the collection of all of this, radio, then we had Marconi, Hertz, we had a guy called Maxwell. And then he couldn't unify all of those things with his famous equations. And that was a big deal, a big jump, of course. But that was based on what? Previous exploratory, kind of touching, the space around in the dark. That's exactly what we are doing here. So the way I think is that with time, we will come to this point of saying, look, what is this kind of energy? Because now I have no idea. As in the past, people thought magnetism and electricity were two completely different things, and nowadays we know they are manifestations of the same thing, electromagnetism. Okay? But then what I want to do with this research, some of these things I have mentioned before. Okay, detect the existence of this bioenergy and prove it. Okay? I know proof is a relative thing. Okay, anyway, but to the acceptance of most of it. Okay? Measure it, create a scale unit and a zero reference for it. Understand its attributes, establishing general laws like electricity, just like I discussed here with you. Understand its effects over matter, mainly organic matter, in vitro and in vivo. So perhaps this way we would understand the mechanism of consciousness over matter. Again, why are we able to do this? Why, when I am outside of my body projected, I can move there in that other kind of vehicle, subtle body, but my physical body doesn't move. And I can pass through the walls, I can fly, that other body is under a different set of laws. We could say of physics, paraphysics, metaphysics, I don't know. Okay? And we want to understand, neurological changes in the brain during the execution and reception of energy techniques, mainly that thing I called the vibrational state, and I'm going to explain later why I picked that. And then to understand how the consciousness acts on the brain and receives information from it. And then create that theoretical framework within a multidimensional nature of consciousness. Well, we start here. And I am at this phase here. Okay? But anyway, we can see what is ahead of us. Okay? I don't know if this is going to take 20 years, 200 years. I don't know if I'm going to continue doing this in my next life. Okay, it could be. But why I picked this so-called vibrational state to begin with? Because most of the people, as it happened in my case, said this so-called vibrational state was a kind of a resonance, a kind of a peak of the power of the energy. So I thought, well, if it is a much, how can I say, more intense regimen of the energy, perhaps it's going to be easier to detect than just the normal baseline level of life of a being. And also because many times people said, as I told you, this so-called vibrational state happened before some specific altered states of consciousness, mainly the out-of-body experience. So for me, it seemed to be a kind of a bridge between what is physical and what is non-physical, something we like to call extra-physical, okay, beyond the physical. And also because this so-called vibrational state, besides being spontaneous in many cases, can be provoked, can be created using some specific techniques. If you go there, check again, Robert Morrow's book and many other people there, you're going to see people give their particular techniques for it. And in our studies, we think we have developed, the best technique for it. A technique that we call Velo, and here I have a very quick representation of it. How it is done. It takes some time to be mastered, but basically what we do is we try to move our energy field, bioenergy, inside of our body, up and down. Here we have one particular moment, the densification, condensation of the energy is here, now is here, now is here. So we basically move this energy slowly at the beginning, and we keep speeding up, and then suddenly we feel this triggering of a very intense resonance inside of us. The sensation is very powerful, is very clear, there is no doubt. So after people learn this, well, then we can replicate the very same experiment, not only with me, but with basically anyone. So here, what I thought, well, I have felt this vibrational state, and many people mention it, but, well, I suppose this would provoke some neurological changes in our brain, as I had seen with the EEG, but we didn't know with the MRI or functional MRI. And we have some problems here still to answer. Is the brain that provokes this movement of energy and this vibrational state? So the changes we see could be the origin of this energy movement, or could be the result of this energy moving. Why? Because when I get outside of my body, my projections, I'm using that other kind of subtle body, non-physical. And I can move energies there the same way without using the brain. I'm not in the brain, I'm out of the brain. The way we think, brain is controlling what? Muscles, our physical body, but not other subtle bodies. So I still don't know if, when I move my energies up and down, when somebody heals someone else, if it is the brain controlling that, or if it is another part of us, the consciousness, as we were discussing before. This is what, in our studies of consciousness science, we call the para-brain. When you get outside of the body, you have that kind of para-body. You have the para-hands. So, does that body have any kind of internal structure? Organized, like we have in the physical body? Because we are not only one kind of tissue, we have many different kinds of tissues and cells organized and specialized in different ways. And it seems we have the same with this other kind of subtle body. And again, how does the consciousness do it? So, you know that MRI can be used to take pictures, images of the anatomy of the body. So we can know if we have a tumor, if we have an aneurysm, whatever there. But with time, as you probably know, another process was developed based on the work of a Japanese scientist, that is the function MRI, based on the BOLD technique. I don't know if you have heard of this. Blood oxygen level dependent or dependence. I'm going to explain this to you a little bit later. But the problem is that function MRI has a lot of inherent problems. Do you know some of them? It's basically a statistical analysis. And as you know, statistics can cause some problems. I don't know if you have heard of the dead salmon experiment. Scientists who had the opportunity of using a function MRI machine had the idea of putting a salmon dead in the machine. And then they did some experiments and they got this. You know? Can you see this activation inside of the brain of the salmon? So I don't know if this is the case of a zombie salmon, undead salmon, and tonight is the night. Right. Yes, Halloween, you know? As we have the, I don't know, the dead walking or the walking dead. Yes, we could have the swimming dead. Okay? But anyway, the function MRI is a problematic technique because of this thing. We have to take care of a lot of things here. But anyway, let us go ahead. I don't know if all of you know a little bit how is the setup of a machine like this, but it's a big coil. It's just a very powerful magnet. The first parameter that defines a machine like this is the intensity of this static field. There is a measure or a unit called Tesla. You know, exactly because of our dear scientists. At this time when I was doing this, this was 1 Tesla machine. But nowadays, to the best of my knowledge, there are some machines already 9 Tesla, 9 times stronger than this. I might have the opportunity to use one of these machines there in Brazil. A friend that knows a friend who knows a friend. I don't know how many karmic debts I'm going to get with this, okay? Next slide, I can pay this back. But now I need some results. But anyway, as you know, the person gets here in a kind of a bed, a table, press the button, this gets inside. Can you see this kind of helmet? Yeah. This is what picks the signal, the electromagnetic signal, result of the combination between this and the variation of the field provoked by this also. So this is the equivalent of banging a bell and picking what comes back. This aligns all our atoms, nuclei, to the same direction, and this here provokes some, how can I say, disturbance of that, picking the result there. Well, with a lot of computing, we can get the image of the brain. And what happens here, if you know, is that this has to be superconductor. Yes, there is liquid helium flowing here, consumes a lot of electricity. Why? Because to have a hole big enough to put a person inside, you need really a very strong current passing here. This is one of the problems there. As you know, you cannot bring anything magnetic, metal, iron here because it becomes a bullet. There's a lot of problems using this here, but perhaps the time is not going to allow us to discuss this. But anyway, when you get just the MRI images, we would get an image like this without these colorful marks here. So we can, oh look, there is something strange here. Can you see? What is this? A tumor, whatever. But the function MRI uses what? The fact that the magnetic resonance of the blood changes when it changes from a state full of oxygen, oxygenated blood, to what? Deoxygenated blood. Okay? Arterial to venous blood. The blood comes to the brain, rich in oxygen. When we have some particular areas more active, like doing this, okay, that area gets more active, and then the neurons are going to use what? Oxygen. And then the change of the hemoglobin state, having there the oxygen inside, okay, and then releasing that oxygen to have carbon dioxide, changes its magnetic resonance. Okay, and then this is picked by the machine and can be shown like this. This technique has some problems, for instance, because it has a kind of a delay. Sometimes you need to wait for 6 seconds to see this coming. So then the temporal resolution is poor. And this is the advantage of the EEG, because you can see, you can notice something almost instantaneously. For practical uses, it's instantaneously. You do something, show there. But the EEG has what? A poor spatial resolution. You don't know exactly where it happened. It is the advantage of this, because depending on the technology level, the generation of this machine, you can really come to a little bit of volume, very small. You can know exactly where, for instance, to do a medical procedure, if it is, for instance, the case of seizures provoked by a particular area there. And here I pick this image among many for you to see. Look, when a person is speaking, can you see the areas that are activated? So we will see, look, more the left hemisphere, the right one is the same for everyone. Well, when the person is doing the so-called finger tap, because once you get inside of this machine, to adjust the level of sensitivity, because if you make this machine too sensitive, just by being there, there's a lot of activity going on, just by thinking, by being aware there. If you put too low, nothing is shown. So they ask you to do something very simple. I don't know if you have done function MRI before. So they ask you to do this, finger tapping, and then they are going to see if something shows up. Only when you are doing that. They ask you to stop, that thing has to disappear. And then you do the other side, and then they will know everything is prepared. And I suppose you know, we have been using this nowadays to test what? Meditation, altered states of consciousness, mental calculations, memory, emotions, and I don't know if you are up to date with this. They now want to see if we can pick lies through it. Lie detector. Because there is something very obvious, but perhaps we have never thought of this before. When someone is telling the truth, the person uses a lot less of the brain. When the person is telling a lie, it's a lot more. Does it make sense? Of course, why? Because we have to be very careful, to be coherent later, let me memorize, we have to elaborate, we have to create, uses more brain, there is more emotion. So it's just to show a little bit how this is being used now. Well, of course, when I was seeing these things, I thought, if I'm doing the vibrational state, well, are we going to have anything here? Which area? More left side, visual, more the planning, is more motor sensorial? I had no idea. And well, if it is a very particular area, what kind of neurons predominate there? What kind of neurotransmitter is there? So there are many discussions we could have here about this, but time is not going to allow me to do this. And then just for you to compare, because I'm going to use this as a reference later, please, try to take a mental picture of this. This is my finger tapping, okay? So you can see some points. I don't know if the image is clear enough for you. Can you see? Yes. Some yellow and orange points here and there. So you see, with a physical activity, as objective, as real as this is the level of activation we have. Okay, so then I planned to do these experiments having this background I was studying. And then I had 3 series, one done in 2009, in 1 Tesla Philips machine, the same machine later, 1 year later, well, in fact, some months later here. And the 3rd series was done 1 year ago, last December, using a 3 Tesla machine, much more powerful. Okay, so this began as a way to see what happens in the brain during those energy works, energy procedures, absorbing energy, transmitting, doing vivo. But so many things happen, I'm going to show you here, that it turned out to be also a way to detect bioenergy. Connecting to those previous experiments I was done with the transducer using protein. Let me show you some interesting things here. Okay? I'm going to return to this. But anyway, I think it's very important to emphasize, to stress something here. I don't claim these results are the proof. Please, take that these are just what? Preliminary, okay? Perhaps pointing us to the right direction. Perhaps all of this is a big mistake. Perhaps this is called fusion, if you know what I mean. Okay, but anyway, it's part of the research, okay? But anyway, this experiment still mix a lot of neurology, biology, and even physics. It's very difficult to separate them now. I'm going to show you why, okay? So, let me show you here. This is my brain during the peak of production of the so-called vibrational state. So, just to save time, I don't have here the videos, but if any of you want to see, I have here my computer can show you all the development of this, okay? But the thing is, what is the way we were doing this? We had the time for data acquisition there, for a whole session. The first third was me or other people instead of machine doing nothing, just being there, relaxed. And then what would you expect to see in these images here? Just the gray anatomic image of the brain, just that. And then, following a very specific protocol we had established before, there was a moment when I would hear through the earphones the instruction to start. And then I would start moving my energy until I could produce that very strong vibrational state. And then at the proper time, the last third, I would receive the instruction to stop. And then we were expecting to have the brain again out, gray, no activity. So here you see, when I got to the peak of the vibrational state, I got this level of activation. Let us see some of the discussions here. First of all, can you see the amount of activation of my neurons here? Compare this to speaking, finger tapping, and listening as we had before. How does it compare? It's a lot more. It's too much. The person who was helping us, the owner of this machine, a radiologist, was saying, look, there has to be something wrong. This is not a normal brain. It cannot work like this. This is a storm. This is a person having seizures. It cannot be like that. And then we repeated it again and again. Certainly, I tried to isolate many different factors. For instance, was I moving my head? So we tried to see this. Was I moving my eyes? So again, time does not allow me to go through all these boring details, but we covered for all of this. Okay? There was no movement of the head. Even when I vibrated, shook my head there, didn't produce the same thing. Well, this would be interesting enough if it wasn't for what? Images outside. And this was the problem. And then my friend, the radiologist, the owner of the machine, said, this cannot be. The machine is tuned to pick hemoglobin changing its state. Okay? Not that the air doesn't have, or when I say air, a mixture of different gases, of course. Okay? This is not to say that gases don't have their particular, natural frequencies of resonance, but the machine wasn't tuned for that. And then I thought, well, let's repeat this. And I did again, okay? In this case, less activation inside, but more outside. And then I thought, and this was after many experiments, this is, in fact, even skipping days here. And then I thought, well, what if I, instead of activating, intensifying the energy inside of me, what if I transmit, send, externalize energies, like a healer would do through the hands? Well, people, big trouble, it was like this. Do you know what happened here? A little anecdote. Our friend left the room. It's not kidding. My wife, Nancy, was there. He said, this cannot be. No, forget about it. He left the room. He was so agitated. He said, you either broke the laws of physics or you broke my machine. And then I was there, a multi-million-dollar machine. But then we repeated and repeated the same thing. And then I start thinking, look, could my bioenergy field or our bioenergy fields, because I'm not saying I'm the only person able to do this, that's exactly why I said this can be replicated. But can our energy field intensify to a point? It alters the state, the spins of the nuclei of the oxygen, nitrogen, whatever, to the point the BOLD technique, the function MRI technique can pick it. Well, and then I had one idea, and it is very good when you are free to do research, because you can really be like those previous guys and Faraday, Ampere, whatever, because I thought of using this. Have you heard of the phantom? It's a bottle of water they use with some chemicals. Here we have water, copper sulfate, we have sodium chloride, a little bit of sulfuric acid. This is used inside of the machine, instead of a person, to do what? Calibration. Because it's what? Homogeneous medium, no life, so they can adjust everything and anything. Okay, I'm going to show you here. For a while, pretend I'm not here, okay? And they put this bottle inside of this head coil, as they call it. They put inside of the machine, and then they adjust everything. What would you expect from this bottle of water?
Nothing.
Nothing. If it is showing too much sensitivity, and then they adjust until everything is fine, they take this out and they put a person there inside. But then I got this idea, what if I stay here and I send energies to this water? I wanted to simplify the things, because brain is too complex. Could be me, I don't know, having seizures without knowing. It could be, but nobody can say the bottle of water was having seizures. Okay? And many times in science, the whole thing is to simplify. You exclude, filter until you get, well, this is the relevant factor. Yes, of course, I'm still in the middle of this. But then, you know what happened? Poor friend. This was before. Sending energy was this. For me was. My friend was saying, now Wagner, you don't need a medical doctor anymore. You need a nuclear scientist, a physicist, to explain this, because he said, this is not my field. I'm used to pick what? Aneurysms, yes, tumors, this or that, but not this. Okay? And again, of course, I repeated with the very same results. And why something? If this is an artifact, we consider, well, perhaps we had, I don't know, a gamma ray burst somewhere. Perhaps it was cosmic rays coming at a particular time, whatever. But why these cosmic rays or gamma ray burst would occur only when I sent energy? Time passed, and then, I'm skipping this because of the time, okay? And then I got the idea, and then I got the idea of using some other things. Using the 3 Tesla machine, I used a different phantom, the same bottle of water, but with different chemicals. I didn't get the same kind of result. I still want to know if this is because of the chemical composition of that. Instead of copper sulfate, it was using, I think it was chromium chloride. But anyway, I thought of using a potato, something alive, but with a very slow metabolism, because a potato is basically, for a plant, what? Storage. Okay? It's not an active kind of tissue or cells there. Very little result. Little here and there, but a little bit like the dead sound. Okay? And then I thought, well, what about using then an egg, a chicken egg? Well, and then you're going to see. By the way, before we start, I shortened the video because the video is quite long. But again, the first third was doing nothing. And then you are going to hear my friend saying in Portuguese, initiate is the moment I start saying the energy for some time. And then you are going to hear him saying, stop. And then you are going to see what happens here, because this is the best we have. You can see, initiate, and then I start pumping energy. Pumping, and then you're going to see what happens here with the egg. Can you see some colors appearing here? Little by little, and the delay is coherent with the function MRI machine. Gets more clear, stronger, getting stronger, and my friend is celebrating there. Okay, can you see? What is interesting is that this kind of image was in fact showing revealing some structures inside of the yolk that we couldn't see before. Perhaps some proteins, some filaments there. I want to see which proteins are there, because they could be a good information for my other line of research with that protein detector there. Can you see how it went? But the most important thing comes now, when he tells me, stop, okay? Because if this is just anomaly, para, so it's stop in Portuguese. And then I stop, but keeping exactly the same position, and look what happens. And then little by little goes until disappears.
Is that a fertile egg?
Sorry?
Was that a fertile egg?
No, it was not fertilized. But then what happens here is interesting. In the previous experience experiment with the bottle of water, you could see the coil, and my hands were just outside of the coil. And then I thought, well, perhaps even being outside, I could interfere with this signal receiving there. In this case, I am further down. So the coil is there with the egg. I am about like this much away from the coil. So if any micro movement we always have there, that wouldn't interfere with this. And if there was any kind of interference, would happen during the first and the last phase, because I'm there. Okay? So if this, as you saw here, okay? So you have here the comparison, before and after. And then I ask you, is this already a proof of the existence of the so-called bioenergy? Would you accept this as a proof?
Yes.
We cannot, but is what? It is something. It is worth spending some time, some resources and minds on this. I don't say this is proof, because we can only say it is reasonably proved when this was independently reproduced, replicated by other people. And one criticism that could come to me is, look, all of this happened only with you, Wagner, doing. No, in fact, this experiment with the egg was only me. But we had other people, Nancy and other friends, doing the same, but only with the brain and with the same results. Nowadays, I want to do exactly this. So put other people, not me, to send energy to the egg. Is there a result or not? What about the person being out of the machine, perhaps a few yards out? What about from the control room? Because it's shielded, there is no way of us interfering there. Also, what other kind of materials, substances, could be even more responsive than the egg? Is there anything that could be a kind of conductor of bioenergy? Is there such a thing as a kind of bad conductor or insulator of bioenergy? Because if we have a conductor, a good one, and a bad conductor, an insulator, what can we have? Sorry?
Circuits.
Circuit. So if something can be stored inside of a container, well, it has some sort of property like insulator or conductor. I don't know if you know a little bit about Mesmer. Mesmer built a kind of water tank with some copper pipes get inside, and he was able to energize that water, that big tank. And then the patients would go there and just hold those copper pipes and feel energized. Have you ever watched the movie Cocoon? Do you remember the ETs there? Energizing the water? About the same. So if we can have a conductor, insulator, perhaps we are going to have the basic components like the resistor, perhaps the capacitor, and then from that we can build what? Circuits. And this is the beginning of what? Technology, machines. Okay? So let me return here a little bit. Let me see. I have some interesting things here, a little bit more technical, but that can help you. At the beginning, I was using this third session or series of experiments. I was using what they call a shoulder neck coil. Have you ever seen this? It's a much bigger coil that covers your body up to here. This is mostly to see what is happening in your neck and upper body, but that wasn't sensitive enough. So then later on, we switched to the so-called head or cranium coil. And then we got results. So if you want to reproduce this, forget the shoulder coil, get the head coil, okay? And sometimes the effects remained. So in some situations, I was energizing there the water and the egg, but after receiving the instruction stop, they would reduce, but they wouldn't fade completely, you know, to zero. The more I did with the egg, the more of this persistence I got. So every time I stopped, there was a little bit more. Showing what? The egg was accumulating, storing something there. And this, look, makes sense to a lot of things we have seen and heard, okay, from many different areas. People would energize a room, an object, water. And many times healers do what? Energize water, and people drink to get the effect of that. So, which substances can retain this energy for longer? Which ones would dissipate faster? I don't know. Really, I'm confessing here more ignorance than knowledge. But at least I know the ignorance, okay? What we can do with it, okay? Sometimes I got images out of the head, as you saw, but sometimes I didn't get. Why? I still don't know why. We have to repeat again and again until we see this. So far, I haven't seen any specific area of the brain being activated when I send energy, when I receive energy. And there is something that I didn't put here just because of the time. Well, as I was saying, when I was doing the vibrational state or exteriorizing energy, we got all that activation in the brain. And I still don't know if that activation comes from my will, my awareness of doing this, or if it is the brain receiving the influence of other areas, other realms of consciousness. And then what I did, instead of the egg, I put my friend there. You know? I put my friend and said, would you like to be my guinea pig? He got there inside. And the thing is, he was doing nothing, or as nothing as a person can do. Okay? But the thing is, like the egg, when I sent energies to him, his brain lit up. He wasn't doing anything. So, it's still preliminary, of course, but it seems this energy is more like, or at least these images, are more like the result of this energy from other dimensions, perhaps, from other subtle bodies we have. I don't know if you are a little bit familiar with this, but I suppose you have heard of nadis, meridians, chakras. They are not structures in the body of other vehicles, kind of energy body we have. And it seems, I'm very inclined to say, look, it's very probable we are picking here something of the energy body. And if it is the case, look, as I was saying before, some of the consequences of this, okay? Oh, just before that, because there is something interesting. I don't know if it was just a coincidence, I have to repeat this in other machines, but inside of the 3 Tesla machine, more powerful, for me it was a lot more difficult to work with energy, to do the vibration stage, to exteriorize, to absorb, whatever. I don't know if that is because of the magnetic field being much stronger than the previous machines, they were 1 Tesla, or if the machine was, how could I say, with the bad vibes, in lack of a better word, of so many patients going there. You know, with fear, with brain cancer, I don't know. And then, if I get this opportunity of using a 9 Tesla machine, if it is even more difficult for me, I will start thinking, well, there is an interaction between magnetic field and this kind of bioenergy we are studying. If I don't get the same result, I could think, well, perhaps it was just a particularity of that machine. But anyway, as I said, we need to repeat this many, many times, just preliminary results, okay? So, dear future, discover more responsive materials to perfect the protocol and technical conditions, incorporating criticisms and suggestions. We need this. People are afraid of criticism, but that's exactly the most important thing in research. And now, at this phase, I would like to focus more on the effects of bioenergy in materials, more than the brain, for initial simplicity, to understand better, in a less complex condition, what happens with this bioenergy. And then I will return to the brain. Brain is too complex because, as I said, if we get too excited there, it could interfere, okay? As I was saying, is or are the images there? Cause or effect of this bioenergy? I would like to test different materials to develop protocol to measure bioenergy. For instance, can we develop a metric based on the amount of activation there, the color? One idea I have that I think is interesting for you to consider is, when we want the image of the brain, we need what? A very big and complex machine. We need a big coil that costs a lot to keep working because it consumes liquid helium all the time, okay? Electricity all the time. But if we develop a much smaller version of this machine, okay, with just a small space there at the center, where we can put a little vial of water or any other substance, we don't need the images. We just need a computer giving us what? A number. The number was 0 because we just leveled there. You send energy and that number increases, okay? And then this could be in a suitcase, this could be a kind of a tabletop machine, not the multi-million dollars anymore, but something that we could carry around. Measuring energy of people, animals, plants, whatever our limitation, sorry, what our imagination is going to give us there, okay? And as I said, we can test effects of distance, materials in the middle, time decay, accumulation of effects. I can, and I will, try to see how this compares to the experiments with the protein transducer. And I want to see if I can use some of those instruments from Reich to see if we can find any kind of bridge. Because if we can use different ways, like trying to find a kind of, how could I say, confirmation there, okay, this is going to help us, okay? The portable, smaller version of the fMRI, as I just explained to you here, okay? And the development of the bioenergy technology, as I was telling you, I gave you the examples of mechanical energy, thermodynamical, so basically it's heat, yes? Electrical technologies. But then, suppose if we get a transducer kind of element that is able to transform bioenergy into electricity, or the variation of an electrical property, like resistance, capacitance, I don't know. What could we do with that? If we had this technology, what would you do? Measure energies of people? Sorry? This is the second step there, you are quite right. But suppose, could we take, for instance, could we develop a kind of surface, a CCD, do you know what a CCD is? That sensitive semiconductor grid there behind the lens of that camera that translate light in pixels, transforming that into what? Image. If that CCD is able to do this, what would we get there? Chakras? Meridians? A person projected? Wow. This is going to be...
You would need lenses.
Sorry?
You would need lenses and other stuff to make it.
Exactly, we need to understand what are the laws. We would need lenses for this kind of bioenergy. I really don't know. Perhaps a little bit more like sound. I don't know. Really don't know. But as I told you, we could, for instance, measure the bioenergy of places. Is this the best place, for instance, to plant? What about the satellite, as I was saying? Look, it's only a matter of doing some brainstorm here of so many things we would do. But then, you pick there the good part. If we can use a kind of reverse transduction, and then if we can put electricity in a kind of transducer and creating this kind of bioenergy, what could we do with it? Heal. Vitalize someone. Change, cleanse the energy of a place. So you rent by an old house, full of vibes. And then you go with machine there, it's like a hose. You know, washing away everything there. Yeah? Look, I know this is going to sound a little bit too much expecting from you, but I want to be very sincere. I have been to some cases of poltergeist. Have you ever heard of this? Yes. I have seen things moving, catching fire spontaneously, and other things, if I tell you, you are going to say I'm crazy. Okay? Bioenergy is the means for that. So if we can focus a lot of bioenergy in a kind of technology like this, are we going to produce what? Dematerialization, rematerialization, perhaps what they call upwards. An object disappears from here, appears there. Well, now I know we are a little bit sci-fi here. Yes? Star Trek, yes? This would be the way to what? Tricorders? Teletransport? Yes, replicators for those who understand what I mean.
Replace
Yes.
Congress.
Sorry?
Replace Congress.
That would be one of the most important. And I was going to make a joke here at the beginning when I saw how quickly, how easily you went with your voting. And I said, look, you could teach a little bit the Congress, isn't it? Because next year is going to be what? Hell. Yes? But anyway, it's part of the human, maturation process. But anyway, have you ever heard of ectoplasm? I have seen many manifestations of this, and nobody knows what this thing is. It's another type of matter, another type of energy. People in the past, 19th century, beginning of 20th century, they have done some kind of chemical physical analysis of ectoplasm. Sometimes it shows, manifests biological substance of our own body, collagen and water. And even they found some epithelial cells that we have in our mucous membranes. But the thing is, it seems, from what I have studied, seen, and even, concocted, that ectoplasm is a kind of exotic state of matter. Matter goes to a state that is like midway between energy and matter. Have you ever heard of the Einstein-Bose condensates, or Bose-Einstein condensates? If you study that well, and this could be another big lecture, I'm not a physicist, of course. You need to pick someone very knowledgeable of that. But many of the properties of the ectoplasm, they resemble the properties of the Bose-Einstein condensates. So could this form of energy that we are discussing here change the properties of matter, bringing it to another kind of state? Goes to another dimension, materialize, dematerialize it. So, look, there are so many things that can be done, can be studied through this, if this is the right way. As I said at the beginning, one of the purposes here was to share these things with you, but also to motivate you, to get some ideas, criticism. You could say, look, have you tried to see if it wasn't that particular kind of interference? And then I would try to check, to isolate that. But look, I came from a condition of a person leaving the body, experiencing all these things. And most of the people, when they have this kind of experience, what they say, everybody should believe that. Am I right? I don't say that. I am a little bit like one foot in each realm. Yes? The person who perceived can still experience this kind of thing, but a person who can understand it, most of the people will say, this is what? Cuckoo, crazy. And I'm trying to be like the bridge to this. Some other evidences are possible, evidences of the survival of the consciousness, multidimensional nature of the universe. Like, for instance, have you ever heard, I'm sure you have heard, of the near-death experiences? Yes, but this wasn't good enough, or haven't been, for most of the people so far. But if this can create a bridge, if this can at least attract the attention, let me say, of 1% of the scientists, and I think this would be a game changer. I don't expect, because I'm not stupid, to get 100% of the scientists believing this, because not even, other theories, very physical ones, will convince everyone. You know this. Now, what about global warming? Yeah?
Republican or Democrat?
Exactly. What about, human beings going to the moon? We will never prove anything to everyone. Okay, so I'm not that naive. But if we can make a bridge between those who can feel energy, leave the body, they are psychic, whatever, and some open-minded scientists, even if it is 1% of them, look, for me I would say this would be what we call in our studies existential completism. Do you know, like completing our life mission? What we came here to do? And I think this is one of the things of my task. I don't like to put this word like mission, but look, if it is something we can do, if I have projections leaving the body before, if I am an engineer understanding a little bit of these things, I think I have to be. There's no other way, okay, to try to make this bridge, okay? So, that's it. Any question? I just hope sincerely that you have a lot of questions, okay? Because it is impossible not to have them.
Have you tried to leave your body while doing some of the fMRI experiments?
I tried a few times.
What happened?
It was very difficult because, first of all, the machine is very tight, it's very uncomfortable. It produces a lot of noise. Have you ever been inside one of these machines? It's crazy. People sometimes have claustrophobia. Being there for 40 minutes. I have been in one of these sessions for 3 hours and a half. Okay? I think when I was young and exploring some caves, and I really did this with some friends, I think helped me with something like this. Other thing is, the machines still have a lot of limitations. So then the data acquisition window is still very short, 3 minutes maximum. So you initiate the machine, acquire information for 3 minutes, and the computers are, full, and then you have to process that. Because then to produce a projection, perhaps I would need, 30 minutes, 1 hour? But I will try to do this. So I will keep everybody there posted with that little thing that you press, a button, to beep there. So when I feel I'm very close to it, I press the button, and then they start the machine. Perhaps I will leave the body during those 3 minutes, or not. But perhaps if I repeat, and then we will get it. It's a lot easier for us to do this with the EEG, because you can have that machine acquire information the whole night, 8 hours, 16 hours. But then I want now to compare the EEG with this function MRI to see if we can get some cross information to understand this better. Okay, so now I have to say this is just the beginning. Yes, and then I go there to you, Bill.
A couple questions. The first
Yes.
one is, are you concerned at all if you leave your body that if there's all this magnetism and electromagnetism going on, that you may have some issue or difficulty coming back?
I thought of that. You can be sure I did. I don't expect any big problem with that. Okay? And I have to tell you, I'm going to run the risk. Really, because I don't think it's going to have any problem. Do you know why? Again, it's abusing a little bit your receptivity or your belief here. I have had projections of going, for instance, inside of the ocean very deep, or very deep in the Earth's crust, outer space. These things do not affect this other kind of body. Perhaps it's going to be a little bit more difficult to get out of that thing. But even if it happens, for me it's going to be what? Result. Is information. It is going to be interesting for us to know the magnetic field interacts in that way.
And I'll
Okay.
turn off eventually anyway. So.
Yes, exactly.
The other question is, have you ever tried to have multiple people concentrating on a single item in the fMRI machine to maybe magnify the effect?
Not yet, but I have this in my plans. Yes, I do have it. Yes, Mary.
I know this is a little complicated, but have you thought about putting the egg or something in the machine and you being in some type of a Faraday cage and doing the same thing?
I thought of this because the function of the MRI machine is already inside of a Faraday cage. You go there, the walls, even the glass of the control room has a kind of a mesh. So I thought of being inside, outside of the magnetic machine there in the control room, with a camera pointing to me, another camera pointing to the monitor, or perhaps even both at the same time. So then people are not going to say that later on yes, something like this. So at least to reduce this possibility, and then to see what we can do about it.
Yeah, because there should not technically be a difference between you being right next to the egg and you being,
Yes.
you know.
I know that many times when we discuss about bioenergy, all these sort of things, people think this is necessarily another form of electromagnetic energy. Really, I confess here, I don't know what this bioenergy is. But a kind of educated guess I have, this is not electromagnetic field or energy, it is something else. That's why I think the Faraday cage is not going to prevent the flow of the energy. Okay, but let us see, let us test. No, we are still, as I said, the frictioning, the amber against the fabric and attracting needle. That's the point we are in here. Yes, Luis.
Yeah, just really quickly. That the IAC, we give several classes here in the Bay Area, and as Wagner keeps on answering the questions, we just wanted to pass here some registration forms. So if any of you wants to receive information about activities and classes, including Wagner is going to be giving one tomorrow, just leave your contact information here and it'll just pass around as the questions keep on going, okay? Thank you. So I'll start them over here.
Yes. Please.
There's a gentleman in Brazil who has shown very, very strong out-of-body energies. John God.
Yes, I know.
Have you been able to talk to him and maybe?
Not yet.
It would be interesting to have him do that.
I know a lot of people who went
been
there.
I've
Oh, you
been
have been there?
And it
Yes.
helped cure my kidney.
Wow, that's
Okay.
interesting. Yes.
Now, whether that's because I believed it would, that it did, I don't know.
And I think this is exactly what we need. If other people, could be including me, of course, suppose if somebody tries to do this in England or here, they wouldn't pick me, but they could pick a healer, a person known and a kind of confirmed to work, and to do the same. So if we have this working, happening to different people, many, look, this is not a property or particular thing of a particular person, and this is something we really need. So it is something to consider.
It's a significant deal.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, Bill.
So I'm thinking, Wagner, to do this type of work that you're doing, to be a pioneer, so to speak, in trying to bring this forward in any field, it takes a great deal of clarity. So this often comes up. I'm wondering, what is your own personal view, as well as the view of the IAC, since you were the president for so long, on getting our consciousness as clear as possible with what we've been God-given, so to speak, as opposed to using hallucinogenic drugs like ayahuasca, peyote, whatever, LSD. What's your view?
Look, I have never tried any of these substances, okay? First of all, because I didn't need it. Okay? I was already off enough, okay? But anyway, I have had a lot of colleagues, friends, people in my family, okay, students in our courses, who were not able to produce out-of-body experience before. After certain training, not only with us, they could start producing those without any need for these chemicals. We know most, if not all these chemicals, they have, a dark side. They have consequences. Some of them kill neurons. In some cases, this can trigger some psychotic episodes for some people. Look, my opinion, I wouldn't use any of these things. Using this so-called energy, we can induce, if not all, most of those very same states.
I agree.
If we don't want to go that far, sometimes just a kind of some rhythmic rhythm can produce some of those very same things. We already have all these substances inside of us. Melatonin, serotonin, DMT, and blah, 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 blah. So we have to know how to produce this, because in a more philosophical or ethical side of this, we believe very much in one thing. It's not becoming dependent on anything. Do you understand?
Yes.
If it is an ability I can train and integrate, it becomes part of me. For me, that's something we could call evolution, is gaining something. But then if I need this or that machine or this stroboscopic light, whatever, I have tried some of these things. I don't think that those were new abilities mastered, incorporated by the person. You see? So I take this as a kind of a reference. Let us see what we can do by ourselves without becoming dependent on anything. Certainly, we are dependent on so many things, of course. Absolutely. Look, our shelter, yes. The cars we used to come here. But the lesser, the better. But I wouldn't mess with the brain. Look, I'm going to tell you something. I have never been drunk in my whole life. Do you know why? Because since young, I was always trying to get what? More lucid, more conscious, my whole effort. And I was seeing my friends during the university years. I used to live with 5 friends in the same house. We used to share the rent and everything. All of them getting drunk most of the days. And then I thought, what the heck? Waste of lucidity. So I want to be more lucid outside of my body. I want to be able to bring back my memories to my physical brain. As I said, I don't have the time to discuss all of this, but what happens sometimes? Sometimes you leave the body, you are out, you are perceiving, experiencing a lot of things. You have all that story, even sometimes the comprehension, understanding of some of these things. But when you get back, and then you get inside of our monkey body, our monkey brain, a lot of things disappears there. And then you notice, you know, you have there only 10% or even less of your experience. So then why am I going to make this process even harder? I'm not crazy. I don't know.
As you said earlier, make it more complex as opposed to keeping it simpler.
Exactly, exactly. Yes? Yes, please.
I was wondering if you thought about trying to affect entangled particles. You know, like now they can entangle particles and send them 800 miles apart and measure one and then the other one changes.
I have thought of it. I still have to find labs, people, researchers, open enough to create an opportunity one day, one afternoon in one of these labs to see what we can do. But there are other things I would like to try also, based on this, for instance. There is something, it's not my area of expertise, of course, but we have to study everything. Have you ever heard of epigenetics? Yes. I'm pretty sure bioenergy changed our epigenetics, producing a lot of things, health or disease.
That's acquired characteristics in your DNA.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So methylation of some of the genes, why some genes are on or off, expressed or not. But we still don't have the technology to do this very fast. You know, so I could put my finger there, and then we can have that epigenome. Okay?
Fruit flies breed quickly.
And then we could do some exercise and then compare. We can focus in some particular, you know, genes, but you can imagine how difficult it's going to be among the thousands. You know, which ones are going to be the indicators of that. But I think this would be very interesting because many times, you know, epigenetics is the mechanism behind what? Cancer. Oncogenes, you know. Why we have some genes that kill neurons, they trigger the cell suicide. Have you heard of this? Yes, apoptosis. But in some cases, these genes are not working, so the cell becomes, you know, immortal. So, many times we see people who, after some energy work, there is a kind of remission, regression of the cancer. There are so many of these things, and some I have seen of people around me, close to me. And I think this would be a very interesting thing to research.
So why did you abandon an NMR? Because those are lab instruments that are relatively cheap. I mean, $50,000, and you won't get an image, but you can put substances in a little tube, like you said, small diameter, and you can watch maybe the ability to influence changing the spectrum of the NMR.
I didn't abandon that. I want the first or the next steps is exactly to do this. try to research to see what kind of system would be very flexible. I could change the frequencies to try to pick which one would respond based on that particular substance. Could be water, could be protein, whatever. But this is not out of my plans. And I think this is something, I don't know, perhaps you are already with the opportunity to do this, because we have to do this. Suppose if this proof of bioenergy comes from many different people, different sources, even different protocols, different principles. My whole point, look, I was telling here discussing about power technology of bioenergy, but I don't think this is the most important thing. For me, the most important thing is this kind of, how can I say, awakening that people need. What is the whole point? It's not to create a machine to do this or that. But if people need a kind of evidence, if we give them, perhaps this is going to awake a lot of people. Not everyone. This never happens. How would be the level of maturity of our society if 10% of the people are able to leave the body?
10% of the people do everything pretty much anyway. The rest of the people follow. So
yes, exactly. But if we could put this, public, if people could really get interest into this, leave the body, I think this would create a kind of catalysis, acceleration of many processes, as you were saying, mentioning politics, yes, that we need, and we need urgently. Yes? Yes, please.
And by the way, on your fMRI images, I'm curious, surely you measured the distance beyond the head that these patterns came?
Roughly, not precisely.
Yeah, but I mean, was it 5 centimeters, 2 centimeters?
I think the average was about between 3 and 5 centimeters out of the skull.
I mean, one thought I had was the relative humidity right near the body is higher than it is even, let's say, half a meter away.
Yeah.
Have you thought about the bioenergy energized that vaporous water around the body?
I thought of that, but in these machines I used, there was a kind of a blow of fresh air all the time. This is to help people not to feel the claustrophobia there. So there was this of air. Sometimes it was even colder than I wanted it. So I don't know if the vapor hypothesis could be there, but certainly we don't exclude anything. It could be because the water seems to be something very responsive to this bioenergy. Our body is 70–75% water, depending on the way we calculate this. Life is started in water. As you know, water should be a gas at this kind of temperature and pressure, but it's a liquid because of some very particular properties there. Some people say that water can have a kind of a memory, as probably you will know. Water is a kind of a freaky thing. That's why I was using the bottle of water there. But we need to study this more. Okay? Let me just come here. Yes.
About 10 years ago when I went to an acupuncturist, very skilled acupuncturist, he had a little machine and he measured all my meridians and things, all these different points. So I'm wondering, what was he using to measure it? Are you aware that they have machines like that?
Yes, I have one of those. So this basically measures the level of resistance of our skin. Okay, so the theory is that in our acupuncture points, we have a lower resistance because it's like we close a circuit. Because when you touch that thing, you make a contact and then you touch here, and then the machine can indicate these different levels there. This could be like a kind of indirect evidence of energy, but it's not a direct one. It's like when people told me many years ago, oh, Wagner, you are trying to do this with protein, but there is already something to measure bioenergy. It's called what? Killian photography. But that's a complicated thing. First of all, because the pictures are not pictures of the aura or bioenergy. The pictures are of what? Corona effect. Yes? Ionization of the air, okay, under high voltage, as you see in some of our artifacts, the gases can produce light. The question is, if our aura bioenergy can mold, guide, shape the corona effect in some ways. But people discovered so many artifacts with that. The pressure against the photographic film was something interfering there. If our hand has more natural moist or less, would interfere with that. The humidity of the air, so many different factors were interfering with that. So, I'm not saying this doesn't work, but I don't see that as being an easy, reliable way for us to measure bioenergy. And it is complicated because it uses high voltage, high frequency, it's a complicated thing. But again, I don't discard anything. Okay, I think we, as I said, we should come to this from many different directions. Yes.
So you said that so essentially it sounded like you were saying that eggs are a conductor and potatoes are an insulator already. So we could all go to the kitchen and whip up some delicious circuits.
Breakfast.
What would we use as a power source for these? I mean, where would we get it other than just having you come over and focus?
Look, I have seen places, I suppose I have heard of the ley lines, Hartmann lines, radiesthesia. Some places on our planet, they seem to focus, converge more intense energy than other places. Some people are sensitive to this. And I have discovered some of these places. Okay, so even if we are not using a person, but after we have a kind of okay prototype, it would be interesting to leave that prototype in a normal place, to get away from it, no trees, no kind of life there, and then you see what happens. And then you bring this to one of these vortices, or heart chakras, sorry, earth chakras, and to see if something changed there. That's exactly what I want to do one day. Okay? I want to see, for instance, if we build an orgone box, orgone accumulator, what is very simple, very low tech, and we could measure using this, the portable, simple, no nuclear magnetic resonance machine, not these huge ones. If we can measure inside and you get one value, and then outside is a different value, and then we start getting into something. Again, we have to use many different sources, ways to understand this. It's not a single thing. Okay? Yes, please.
We had some wonderful results that were in China, and we were replicating them. They were results using Raman spectroscopy on water. And Chinese Qigong master who was supposed to come, we talked with him, but he never did arrive for doing the actual experiment here. So we had a doctor who also was a healer. And so we ran a prototype with the equipment. And when we ran it, there's a sample that's, like you said, pure. And there's what we were holding, what he was holding, and what he was sending his energy to change. So we put that in. And the fellow who owns the equipment, he couldn't quite believe what he was seeing. And he started turning down the resolution.
Wow.
But we did have some results, but
that is
we
interesting.
had the same thing you had.
Absolutely. Now look, this is something I didn't know, and thank you for that.
He owned the equipment, and he was Chinese, American, and we wanted to back off of it.
I don't know if you need this kind of little incentive, but try that again. Try to get again these people another machine from another university, because we really need to do this kind of thing. Because if this kind of energy exists, and for me it does exist, look, how much of the universe is made of that? People are discussing now about dark matter, dark energy. Have you heard of this? It's because the time is not enough. But what we call bioenergy here could be the dark energy of cosmology. So the whole universe is immersed in this kind of field. It could be. We know that dark matter is what organizes what? Galaxies. Without dark matter, galaxies would spread. So there is a kind of morphogenetic field, if you understand the analogy, holding galaxies. Could this so-called astral body be made of dark matter? Have you ever heard of WIMPs? Weakly interacting massive particles, one of the theories there. So you see how many things you have to study and to follow up, because it's biology and it's physics and it's your own personal so-called spiritual psychic experience. Well, that's reality. So when we become too much specialized, what happens to us? We cannot study these kind of things anymore. We lose completely the picture. Let me see who didn't. Let me go there, please. Yes.
Did you hear about instances that group people can have out-of-body projection, people who don't know each other, that just can happen in one moment, in one place,
Yes.
without doing velo, without...
Yes.
That happened a month ago in Sacramento to my son, he experienced.
Let me tell you something. I know this is going to sound again as a big abuse of your phrase. But Nancy and I had projections together before we met. So, and this is just one example among many. Okay? But I know this would get a little bit off. Okay? You, yes, please, it has been there. You're going to have to get some cramps in your arm. Yes.
Most of your detections have been like presence or absence, or maybe, you know, how strong it is, but not quality. And I have a suggestion is to maybe study homeopathic remedies as far as quality, because if they affect people, if certain remedies affect people and certain remedies don't, if they're a match or not. So that might be a way to study the quality of the energy
That's a good
instead
idea.
of just presence or absence.
I thought of using something along the lines of homeopathy because of this memory effect of the water. You know, the water clusters, blah, blah, blah. But now you give it a slightly different idea that is very interesting.
Right, the storage in the water is just the storage mechanism.
Yes.
But I was speaking of Raman spectroscopy. I mean, studies of the water for different remedies are able to pick up different signatures for the different remedies. I mean, different waveforms. So it's just a way of getting different qualities of the
I
energy.
see.
Not
I'm
just
going
that.
to study more, you know, the Raman spectroscopy, to see if I get any insight idea that I could perhaps combine with this. Interesting. Thank you for the suggestion. Yes, please.
That's a low-tech question, but did you try to use your own feeling, love or gratitude, and see how it impacts the bioenergy?
Not yet, but I have this in mind. Because so far, as our friend there said, I have wanted to know more if the energy is present or not, different intensities. Later on, to be able to go more to the quality. But I think we are so crude, even to detect the presence or not of the bioenergy. But it's not excluding, it's just establishing the sequence, just that. Okay? Let me just try to give opportunity to other people.
Another low-tech question. Would you be willing to describe one of your experiences in another realm, perhaps the one where you saw the advanced machinery? Like, what did it look like? What were your sensations?
Now you are going to kick me out of here, you know, the straight jackets. But look, I have seen, it's just, you know, look, I have seen so many different equipments or paratechnology, but not all of them look like machines. Most of them look more like organic things than anything else. Okay, they are not of this nature. So I think we are going to get close to this when we develop nanotechnology. And look, we were discussing about protein. It is something different. But I have seen, for instance, kind of machines. One thing interesting for you to think.
Honestly, I'm so sorry to interrupt. I'm not interested in the machine so much as the setting, the space, the room, the structure.
I have been to places that were like communities or cities, places that were natural, but the extra physical nature sometimes is very different from the nature we have here. So it's not always that we associate to plants or animals, and things are very different. And sometimes you go to places that are very beautiful, positive, you go there and think, wow, once this body deactivates, I would like to be in a place like that. But sometimes you go to some places Not even the worst Halloween movie is going to depict that well.
And
You know? Why? Because these places, exactly through the very same mechanism, they are just a reflex or a reflection of what people have in their minds. So when you have a group, accumulation of people who are, how can I say, more sane, you know, with enlightened ideas, how is the environment around of them? Light, beautiful, pleasant. And then sometimes you go to other places where you have the accumulation of people who are confused. They were afraid of dying. They have a lot of conflicts, remorse, grudges, whatever. What is the kind of environment they create around of them? Because our matter here is very steady. It takes a lot of this so-called bioenergy to change it. Like I saw in the case of materialization, dematerialization, fire, and so on. But in these other realms, that kind of matter is very docile to our thoughts. It changes quickly. So some places are like heaven, other places are like hell. And this is one of the things many times people have a trouble with, because they have to have some kind of structure, some kind of maturity to go to these places and be useful or not to be affected by them. But certainly I wouldn't say this would be like most of our experiences. Most of the projections are what? Of people leaving their bodies, they see their body, they pass through the wall, they go to see mom, dad, or go to the outer space. But the thing is, we don't know where this kind of sequence of dimensions, how this goes, how this ends. You know, we keep evolving, our thoughts are our own limitations, but our own tools, or even beyond thoughts, of course. And basically we can do anything we want. But do you know what is the problem? If we think, if you accept this hypothesis, this idea that we, consciousness, are beyond space, time, matter, and energy, we are cosmic beings. But the problem is that we are inside of a monkey body. And then I ask you, when you see the news, when you look around, which aspect of people predominate? The cosmic consciousness or the monkey body? I rest my case. It's monkey business everywhere. No, his instincts, his domination, is, you know, conquering is. So the problem, yes. But then, this is what I have noticed since I was very young. So we are something else. You are outside, you don't feel pain, you don't get tired, you fly, you go everywhere. But once you get inside of the body, how do you feel? All that expansion of consciousness comes like through a funnel, and you become what? You feel like that. Look, I know it sounds just like a joke, but then you start feeling gravity, or you are hungry, you need to go to the restroom, and it is ridiculous. I have to tell you, it requires some maturity for you to be like the Superman during the night, and a dumb Clark Kent during the day, you know? Without alienating, without wanting to quit your life and things like this, you know? But I think that these projections, once a little bit controlled, they enrich our lives, or they could enrich our lives so much. Look, because in my opinion, okay, my humble opinion, without these projections and everything that comes with it, I think life would be so meaningless, so dumb, so, how can I say, bland, because I couldn't imagine myself the way I would be if I had not had those projections before. Yes, please.
You told us several very interesting things, like you don't see that bioenergy has a magnetic component, and you're looking into whether it can be focused. Does it, a thought goes everywhere around, or a thought goes particularly to the object? And you're probably also looking into whether it needs a conductor. Is it always air, like our local experiments, or can you do it through solid objects, or through water, or space?
I have done some of these things with myself, for instance. Suppose you go to the top of a hill, no trees, it's just empty space, atmosphere around of you. And you go there, you try to expand your energies to all directions. you will have an idea of the amount of effort you put there and the flow that is result that comes from this. It's like the voltage and the current. Okay, so you have an idea of the resistance of that space. And then go to a swimming pool or to the beach, get inside of the water and do the same. You will see that the surrounds, the environment changes. It's different. The energy, how can I say, expands, flows in a different way. Sometimes you need to put more effort, more voltage to get the same current. Sometimes you enter some places, people's places, a house, and it's very difficult for you to expend your energies there. You feel like if you are trying to push, you know, a building. You understand? Sometimes I try to help people this way just to help them to understand this. A little bit of what we are going to discuss tomorrow in this workshop. But sometimes I have some people, I put there in a chair and I try to send energies to them. Some people are very open. You put a little bit of effort and a lot of energy, so low resistance. Other people, you put a lot of effort, you push this, a little bit of energy passing there, and then you think, look, a very high impedance or resistance here, but the most important thing is why? It's not just the fact, being open or more closed, why? What happens inside of this person, the level of emotions, thoughts, whatever, traumas that causes this? And sometimes a person can be very open, for instance, in the head, and have no trouble sending energies here. But when you come to the heart chakra, it's a rock. So this is not just an overall process, can be more localized. So, anyway, I invite you to try to do the same. You are going to interact with animals, even our own pets, or trees, and each one responds in a completely different way. Sometimes, as it happened this morning, Nancy and I went to have a walk there by the bay in San Francisco, and then a dog came, very friendly, and then I just went there. When the dog came, I could feel the field of energy around the dog, quite big, you know? And then I even told Nancy, look, what is specific about that dog? That she has so much energy, much more than the other dogs. And then you start thinking, are there different levels of evolution even among dogs? It makes sense, of course, yes. Some dogs are serial killers. Other dogs are heroes, altruistic. Look, this is complicated, of course. And of course, I'm not saying I have the answers for that. Yes, ma'am.
This is somewhat a little bit unrelated, but have you ever had ectoplasm show up in any of your classes that you could visibly see, or had an independent voice show up in the room?
I have seen with my eyes some partial materializations. I remember once I was in a friend's house trying to sleep. I was just staying there for a while. But it was a medium, a person working with energy, healing people, doing, the channeling. And then I was there and I felt a presence behind me. And then suddenly I felt a cold hand in my back. But look, it was physical like this. I have seen sometimes in some places that kind of a smoke spinning, turning, like shaping roughly a human body. And I thought, wow, look, this is ectoplasm. And I saw many other things. We have in our organization, IAC, some sessions, sometimes part of a course, in which we try to see if we can produce more ectoplasm. We use an infrared camera and some other things there to see if we can beat this. So far, nothing that we could say, look, here, there is the evidence. Mostly our own personal experience, but we are going to get there. Yeah?
Yes. So are you telling us that these feelings or these situations you see when you're out of body are a production of collective consciousness? Or what would you describe it if you did not that?
Some of those things could be products of collective consciousness, as we do. Look, for instance, this building. In a way, we could say this is product of what? A common work of many people, some design, other built, other use, maintain this. So there are many things outside of the body that look like this, but it's not the only mechanism. There are many things there. Do you know for me what is the most complicated thing of all, many times, is to know what is natural, what is artificial outside of the body. There is a very complicated philosophical discussion here. You know, what is artificial, what is natural is a complicated thing. Well, let me give you this example. Is a beaver's dam natural or artificial?
It's artificial for the beaver. It's artificial of the beaver.
But what would be your personal convention decision? Because now we are going to do what? Agree on what? A definition. Most of the people would consider the beaver's dam natural, but ours are artificial.
Yeah, what's an igloo?
So I don't agree with that kind of reference. Okay? Beavers' dams are artificial, and ours also, or both are natural.
Yeah.
Because if an ant colony is natural, if a bird's nest is natural, for me this is natural. Okay? It's because we use this kind of anthropocentric thing. What we do is special, different. It doesn't work for me. But outside of the body, this is even more complicated. What is natural, what is not, what is created by us. Because as I said, because that kind of energy or matter is a lot more docile, quick to express ourselves. We never know. This is complicated. And when I was discussing about this parotechnology, this is one of the troubles there. You know, because you could think, is the human body a form of technology? For the consciousness. It is. It's a machine. It's an android. You get out of it. It gets empty. So certainly the monkey body has what? Has an operating system, yes. Running, keeping the body alive. Some instincts, but once you get out, it doesn't express any kind of intelligent manifestation. But once you get inside, there's another layer that you put there, and then you can do some other things. So for me, this is an android. Yes, this is a machine. Look, as you are a very intelligent, smart crowd, I have a lot of these questions because sometimes this keeps me awake during the night. If we think of that theory of the Big Bang, yes?
Yeah.
I suppose you have heard of this, Big Bang. Okay? Did the Big Bang create only this physical universe we are in, or other levels of reality also? These other realities we can see when we get outside of the body. Or these other realities existed before, and then we have this manifestation of the physical dense universe. Was the manifestation of this physical universe an expression of this bioenergy? I know I'm going to keep some of you up awake during the night there. Yes, please.
If the monkey body is an android, then why can't you come back into a different body? Does it have an address? So you know you've come back to the right one? I mean, can you animate a dead body?
I think, yes, I know what you mean. It seems, I cannot say I know all the details of this, of course, okay? But it seems we, as consciousnesses, we created this body slowly, little by little, with all the synapses and circuits. So this is adapted to us. So it's not fits well, yes. So it is not so easy for us to get inside of another body, of another person, and then to control it. But this happens until a certain point, with some things we call what? Channeling?
So
being a medium?
you and Mary decided
possession?
Possession. You know, that would have been interesting. You met her before you ever physically met her. You had an agreement. I'm going to go in yours and you're going to go in mine. That's just interesting.
We were already inside of physical bodies, of course. Yeah, so it seems we had some kind of previous affinity, inclination towards each other. We can even consider if we had planned to be together later on in this life. You know?
Together in previous lives.
Perhaps, yes. Look, again, abusing your your acceptance here. I have a son, now almost 30 years old. I met him before his conception. I could tell people the way he was going to like and be. Nobody believed me. My own relatives told me what? I was crazy. And then, one of the bad traits I have, I like to rub things on people's face. I love to do it. And then I was telling people 5 years later, being a toddler, isn't it exactly the way I told you? Even the behavior, it's not only the looks. You know what is interesting? This is a lot more common than you think. A lot of parents, people, they have, they call dreams, but they were not dreams. They were some extra-physical experiences in which they met the consciousness before coming here. So then after a while, how do you start seeing life and all these things? In a different way, more interesting, better.
More chances.
Yes. At least, under my point of view, for me, I don't want to impose this on anyone, it makes a lot more sense. And by the way, nothing of this is new. Of course, we have heard of these things. That's why I'm doing this, to see if at least part of my own reality, if I can share with others. Perhaps this will not allow me to prove to people I met my son before he was conceived. Perhaps not. But perhaps this is going to make some people open, interested enough to study this reality, and they will have their own experiences. Because the only way for us to be sure of these things is having our own experience. But even being a researcher with that, because sometimes some people have a little bit of information, experience, and they blow out of proportion. Have you seen people doing like this? Mm-hmm. They fantasize too much. Mm-hmm. And even being a person open to this, in a way, I am very skeptical of a lot of things. Mm-hmm. Because people, when they tell their experiences, they have this piece of information and they create a whole story. Mm-hmm. You understand? Mm-hmm. They fill up too many blanks with their own imagination. So all of us have to be very careful to say, look, I only perceived this. This is the much I perceived. Okay? Yes, please.
Consider that your son was actually interviewing you before his birth, rather than the other way around. You're meeting him, but he was really meeting you.
It's true. It's true.
The concept that the child takes the parents.
And I can even reinforce that, because I was still living in São Paulo, in Brazil. I had a spontaneous projection, so I wasn't planning to have a projection that night. I didn't try. Okay, I went to sleep. In the middle of the night, I felt getting outside of my body and waking up. I looked there, my body was there. And then I went to my living room. Okay? You see what? The projection. When I went there was this little boy, the toddler there. He looked at me, he smiled, and did like this. And then I thought, what the heck is this? Why is this guy here? Then, okay, you go there. And then I hugged him, he hugged me back, and then I felt this very strong energy. It was exactly when I got this very strong perception, intuition, that it was a certainty, look, I'm going to be a father. But that emotional impact brought me back to my body. I woke up, look, I'm going to be a father. But then it took 3 or 4 months later for his conception. Look, it wasn't to get the news, okay? It was really before. So, in a way, it could be his choice, selection, yes, but perhaps because also of previous affinity, okay? And as I said before, because I think this is the most important thing, a lot of parents get that. Please, don't think that I'm special with that. I'm not. A lot of people get that. But they dismiss completely. No, this was just a dream. This makes no sense. But a lot of people get that. But then once you meet or met people before they were born, then you meet people after their physical bodies deactivate, then how would be our level of maturity in life and towards life? And I think this is what humans need. Mainly at this phase of our evolution. Now we are at the brink of so many critical processes. Yes, we are at the brink now of causing some irreversible changes in our planet, in our ecosystem, even sociologically, politically. I think people need this, because I think it has been too much monkey behavior, too much monkey business. I don't know if you agree with me. Yes. We need to be less monkeys. let us start that campaign, perhaps with some t-shirts, be less of a monkey. What monkeys like?
It says no monkey.
No. Yes, let us see, because I think this is important. Let me see who else. Yes, here.
Right. In certain spiritual and healing circles, people talk about things having certain vibrations,
Yes.
Such as colours and things. Have you looked into that?
Not in this kind of research. Oh, sorry. Yes, of course. She was saying that in so many different currents or knowledges, people talk about things having different vibrations or colors or frequencies. If I have looked into that. Not through this particular research, not yet, but it's a little bit like our friend told us about quality, and this is something I want to see later on. But through my own perception, yes, we can perceive that things have different qualities, different energies.
Because maybe you could position certain things next to the object that is of the same colour or of the same kind of... I know that there are frequency measures.
Yes.
Do you know of those?
Yes.
Yeah.
I want to do something similar to that. For instance, she said if, for instance, we could put things close to others to see if these things would influence like the things I test here. Okay, I have thought of some of these things. For instance, suppose if I energize a portion of water, okay? As much as I can. And then I bring water without any previous energy treatment and the other one and put inside of the machine. Would the machine show this differently? Would the property of one transfer to the other or not? Look, as you can see, how many hours of a function MRI machine would we need? And sometimes I get 8 hours and I have to do as much as possible just to set up, for you to be there, for everything to start. It takes about 1 hour for each of the subjects, people there inside. This consumes a lot. So far I have been lucky enough to get some people who allowed me to use their machines without paying anything, because we didn't have the money to pay for this time. So sometimes on weekends during the night, and this is what I will be forced to keep doing, because look, this requires a lot of money, okay? But fortunately, many good-natured people, very good people have helped us with this.
There are healers who are trained to project different frequencies of light, many of which are in the visible spectrum, but
Yes.
not all of which, and I'm actually one of them. So that kind of goes along with
Yes.
your comment of the woman. who's
And this is
also-
something I want to see with time. Different people, different forms of energy, different personalities. How would this alter this kind of thing here? Okay? Yes, please.
This is all very fascinating. Can you describe what you're going to cover in tomorrow's workshop?
Tomorrow is not going to be so technical like this. It's going to be more in a practical tuning. I'm going to discuss about energy, a little bit of what it is, at least the history of it. Different types of energy, for instance, energy from the earth, plants, water, air, energies from people. A little bit of what gives energy different qualities, as you were saying. This is basically our thoughts and emotions. But mostly would be teaching you and practicing with you how to absorb energy. Suppose if you go to a natural site, and then if you want to recharge your batteries, what we can do there. And how can we send energies to help someone, or even to do things like this. Okay, and we do this in a very direct way, using will. So it's not so much about imagining, thinking of colors. It's like doing this. If I ask you, what do we need to do this? Do I need to imagine this to work? No, we just do it. We can do the same with energy. And also the so-called velo and the vibrational state. And of course, discussing different applications or benefits of this. And tomorrow, Mary, how many hours am I going to have? Because I don't remember.
10 to 4.
Sorry?
10 to 4.
10 to 4.
With a lunch period in the middle. Yeah.
With a lunch period in the middle. So this is going to be, I don't know, 5 hours. So 5 hours, a little part theory, part practice. Okay, and then certainly what we are going to see, as always, is that some people are more prone to it, more sensitive. Other people need more time. But I have to tell you, the first time I practiced some energy with a friend there in Brazil a long time ago, I was 21 years old, I couldn't feel anything at all. Zero. So if I could sense some energy later on, any of you can do it. Okay, because sometimes people think, okay, this is just for special people, people who were born with this kind of a gift. No, it is not the case. We can develop this. It's like if I ask you, can any of us learn how to play piano? Can? Anyone? Yes. But what about the inherent predisposition, talent to that? Some people will learn much faster, will go much farther, they will play much more harmonically. Other people will take longer, will be just hammering the keys there. It's exactly like in this area. Everyone, anyone can learn to control energy, to be sensitive to it. Some people will have more talent. Why? I don't know, perhaps genetics, perhaps practice of this in past lives. There are many different possibilities there. Who else, people? I don't know how long we have here, but there, go there.
Well, I just want to put something out there since you brought it up earlier about dark matter, because few people know that Meryl Streep actually produced and co-starred in a movie called Dark Matter. And it's exceptional about a brilliant Chinese student who's brought over to an American university to study under a professor who's a physicist, and he starts to see the student where the professor is wrong and where he's going with this new train of thought. And the struggle that you're talking about when somebody comes in who has that type of genius and it's not accepted. So it's really an interesting movie.
I haven't seen the movie.
Most people haven't. But Dark Matter, simple.
Dark Matter. So this is easy to go and find.
Yep.
Who else? Yes, please.
Do you think, I'm just wondering what your opinion is, whether the out-of-body state is a higher spatial dimensional state or possibly a parallel third dimensional state? Have you thought about that?
Yes, I have.
Like 4 or 5 dimensional, or maybe just another 2-dimensional?
Well, I don't have a conclusion about that, but I think it points more to a higher spatial structure, of dimensions there, to the best of my knowledge. Yes. But this doesn't exclude the possibility of parallel, three-dimensional worlds, but so far I haven't seen any kind of evidence of that. But this is complicated. Do you know why? Let me give you a few examples, perhaps along the same lines of some of the questions there. We have this very particular kind of vision we have here, yes? Binocular vision that gives us the perception of depth, parallax, and many of these other kind of phenomena. But many times when we are projecting, our vision is completely different from this. I remember once seeing a kind of a road, but the road was not converging at the horizon. You understand?
Yeah.
It was parallel all the way. How can we reconcile this with our perception? So sometimes we are outside of the body and we see things, and they look different with more depth. Well, I don't have words to express this, but it's like if we were having a kind of an optical effect. Sometimes you look something and then you can see behind it. Like a kind of curved ray of light. How can this happen here? Sometimes you look at a building that should be opaque, you focus your vision, then it becomes transparent.
So that's a higher four-dimensional.
Like that flat land, kind of analogy people use. And there are so many of these things. Some are very interesting. Sometimes you see some, how can I put this in a way? When we think of our planet, we think of the whole surface of it. It's a continuous, closed, not closed, but complete, contiguous surface. But sometimes you go to some places of these other dimensions, and it seems to be only a little part, a little surface. that is populated, but has no boundaries. Those things dissolve. Do you understand what I mean? It's like if they were floating in the outer space. I have been to places in which the space is transparent as ours here. You can see stars. But you go to other dimensions and the space is opaque. You cannot see at a distance. I told you I was going to. Sometimes you go to some dimensions, you can see a kind of reflection, a double of our star's sun. And you go to others, there is nothing like our sun. So, some of these extra-physical communities, they are like a space station floating in the emptiness of space. There is no planet associated to it. And things get more and more interesting. I have all the notes of this experience I had. I plan one day to publish this, to see if this can poke, stimulate other people. And certainly I'm not the only one. But all of this gives me those, stimulate me to think of this thing that I was saying, that I like the power of nature. We think of our universe, but how this coexists with these other levels of reality. That's why I came with that discussion here about the Big Bang. Have you ever heard of the M theory or brain theory? Like two different universes, like two surfaces colliding and then provoke our Big Bang. It could be something like that. It's just expression of other higher dimensions. But we don't know if this was just, once in a lifetime, if I can use this expression, a phenomenon, or if this is happening all the time. Really, I don't know. But look, can you imagine, perhaps this is going to give you some ideas. If we could have people from their specific areas of expertise trying to go deeper on their own areas. Physicists able to leave the body. Biologists go into other dimensions and study life in other dimensions. How that kind of life interact with ours here. Are those form of consciousnesses to have physical expressions in the future? Were they here in the past? What about, for instance, a archaeologist studying history or other times of our civilization using this kind of ability? Historians, whatever. You can pick any profession or any area of expertise and it would be completely blown out of proportion in a good way using this kind of things. But people keep what? Narrowly focused only on these physical things here. Medicine, well, needless to say. Yes. Mental health? Oh boy. Some people say 1 in 5. Some people say 1 in 4 of the human population is a kind of a little bit off. I'm not saying necessarily negative, okay? Because most of the genius we had in our civilization, they were what? Not normal. And please, I want to be not normal. Okay, that's a challenge. Be not normal, but balanced. Okay, this is the challenge, okay? Without alienating. Why? Because I have never been in any of these projections. I'm thinking, oh, look, I don't want to return to my physical body anymore. I never thought of that. But some people do think like that. So, what is our conclusion about that? They are not mature enough to have this kind of experience. Okay? It's like a kid who goes to play and thinks, it's so good, I'm not going to return home. Why bother? There with, my mother and father, it's so boring. It's the same level of maturity. Yes.
Many of the people that have had near-death experiences talk about this very deep, profound love and understanding that they find in other dimensions. You haven't talked about that yet. Can you comment on that?
Yes, I can. Many times people have projections, out-of-body experiences, nothing related to death or any kind of harm to the body, and they have the same kind of transcendental realization or understanding. Not all of them, in not all the cases, but some projections, they can be even deeper, more profound than near-death experiences. Have you ever heard of a kind of very rare, important phenomenon of the consciousness called samadhi, satori, nirvana, union mystica, oceanic consciousness, and the list goes on and on. We just call it cosmic consciousness, with just a name like any other. In those experiences, people can have a kind of understanding of reality that goes beyond, way beyond even near-death experience, because they go beyond space, time, duality, the separation that exists, seems to exist between us and other things. And many times, people who study these things, we study in a personal level, that's their target. To have experiences more and more ample, much more profound, until they can have this other state. We use that model of having different vehicles. A physical body, the energy body, the so-called astral body. There is another body that people call mental body. Have you heard of this? Yeah. Causal body, buddhic body, there are many different names, depending on the kind of cosmology you use there. In that kind of manifestation, we don't have properly a body. No arms, no heads, just the consciousness. You can either express yourself as microscopic, seeing the structure of matter, atoms, nuclei, and everything, or sometimes you feel you can see the whole universe as being smaller than you. Because if consciousness has no space, there's no size to it. But the problem is we cannot switch. We don't know how to do it. It's different kind of manifestations. Sensing energy, expanding our energies, leaving the body, we think is like the natural growth process that can lead to that. But we know that sometimes some people have this kind of, we call it extrapolations. They can have like a jump to another state and they return to the normal state we have here. How many people had, if you study philosophy, history of religions, they had this kind of, like Buddha had, and many others, you know? Samadhi, Satori, Nirvana, there are many different names for this. When people use those in Zen Buddhism, when they use those koans, have you ever heard of this? What is the idea? What is the purpose of that?
To still the mind.
Cosmic consciousness. Sorry?
To still the mind.
Yes.
I think when the mind's
get out of the monkey
still,
mind.
Everything's clear.
Yeah. Sorry.
Where you're really headed at this point finally is to the recognition that consciousness, or I, as we experience it, exists and is fact, and that everything else, whether it is mental, emotional, physical, that we say after I is just an adjective that can be changed, and that is movable. And as long as we consider I to be within this little individual piece of monkey body, as you beautifully described it,
yes, the metaphor, right,
then we have limited what is possible and what we understand. Once we recognize that I am exists,
without interrupting you, is conditioning. We condition ourselves, we condition each other, we were conditioned in the past. Even nature, the way it is, seems to condition us. We cannot get out of that, but it's possible to get out of that condition.
We have been taught by the scientific mindset in which we live that everything must be provable. But out here in the space between us is measurable but has no meaning. The reality inside has meaning, but cannot be measured, and that's where we are.
Let me tell you something, just a quick thing. According to this, adopt paradigm in science, consciousness is something that derives from the brain. They like to call it a phenomenon of the brain. And most of our theories, assumptions come from this, okay? Consciousness is a kind of accident. Some people, even in neuroscience, they try to show consciousness is a myth, it's a mistake, it's a fiction. I don't know if you have studied a little bit about this. But we have this friend, a physicist, who is developing a completely different, separate theory, starting going the other way. Starts from the consciousness and goes, everything is expressed from that. And then we had Nancy and I long talks with him. He was even saying, he with his team, they are developing a new mathematics for that. Okay, it's not 1 + 1 = 2. They are going to create, they are creating different kind of logical, mathematical entities. So it's like proving from the bottom up. And it starts with the consciousness, yes. And then matter, energy, and if he succeeds with this, even those constants of physics, those basic equations, you know, Planck equation, will derive from that, if he succeeds with that. And then he was saying, you know, Wagner, working on the theoretical side of this, and then we are working on the experimental side of that. Let us see these things. Join. Now, what do we do? Nancy and I have been putting a lot of energy on him to live long enough to finish this. Can you imagine?
What's his name?
I prefer not to say because, well, it's not a secret, but let us wait until he does, because he's going to publish, you know, few things, steps of that in a little while. Okay, just because he's still working in a very discreet way, not talking too much about that. Okay, but perhaps he will show up any day discussing that with you. Okay. Yes, please.
You mentioned alcohol kind of dampens lucidity.
Sorry.
You mentioned alcohol dampens lucidity a little bit.
Yes.
Is there anything that I could do like every day, or anything or herb I could take that would help? No, I've heard like
yes, there is a very important herb. It's called the lettuce. You know? No. Just no psychological, psychoactive expression at all. It's just a joke.
Yeah.
Forget if I can give my contribution to that. Okay, I don't want to impose anything. Forget completely about all of these things. For instance, what I think is more productive, learn how to relax well. Okay. Most of the people think they can relax, they cannot. Relaxing well is when you go to your bed, relax. After a while, you stop feeling your physical body. It disappears completely. You can only sense you as the mind there. Most of the people cannot do that. Work with energy. Learn how to absorb energy, intensify, exteriorize, and then you're going to see these things work a lot more than any of these things. If you see any of our meetings, somebody's telling me like this, of our people in IAC, you are going to say, most of us are, how could they say, alcoholized, how could I say, intoxicated. But no alcohol at all, because most of the people use alcohol for what? De-repression. Yes, but if you can de-repress without alcohol, I remember my years at university, I could experience and have more fun than most of my friends who were drunk. And they think they were having fun. I was having fun and making fun of them. And they didn't know. Forget these things of the chemicals in general. Just be as healthy as you can. Protect your brain to work well until you reach 120 years of age, 150. People don't know we have to invest now to take care, to be able to be very lucid when we are 100 and something. But people start damaging their brains when they are in their 20s, 15s. Oh, goodness, this is crazy. Okay?
Thank you.
Last piece of thing here. We had this idea, when I say we, science, that our neurons keep dying, that we cannot produce new neurons. But recently we learned this is not a fact. Yes, certain areas of the brain, the hippocampus there, can still produce new neurons to patch up some areas there. Do you know what stimulates this neurogenesis the most, at least to the best of our knowledge today?
Meditation, joy.
Physical exercise.
Oh.
Physical exercise. Exercise, the lesser your level of stress, the best for you, for us, to keep helping our brain. So we thought it was only for our muscle. Well, people, perhaps you don't know, but if you allow me, I keep talking the rest of the night. Thank you very much. It was sincerely a pleasure and an honor to be with you guys, because the thing I like the most is to be with people who think alike, you know, at least the same lines, less of praising monkeys, as I said. Thank you, people. See you next week.